Everybody ain't your friend. Everybody ain't your partner. I say I got you. I got you. Yeah.
All right, y'all. How y'all doing? What's going on? Welcome, everybody. What is going on? I am about to read for an hour. Y'all know how we do it. We just gonna get right into it too, because I had a busy day. I really did. Hello, who is that? Hello, Gail. How are you doing? Hello, Ashley. How you doing? Ash, what's going on, girl? Vita, greetings to you. Kizzy is in the building. What's up? What's up? Okay. All right, guys. So when we stopped the other day, we were getting ready to read the defense's opening statement. We read the prosecution's opening statement. Hello, hello. New sub, thank you so much. SK, how you doing? Welcome. Z Braids is in the building. Robert, no nonsense. Fletcher, Janet, Letha, come on in here, everybody. Come on in, come on in. Let's get this party started. A power hour of reading. Okay, hello, Sharon. How are you doing? I hope you are feeling better. Thank you for stopping by. Okay, and Sean. All right, guys. Before we go back into the actual opening statements, there was a new document dropped. Before their sentence, they have what you call a pre-sentencing report. And Terica's, why can I not find this document up here? Terica has, she is disputing something that's in her actual pre-sentencing report. Guys, I am having some trouble here. Hold on a second. Wait a minute, y'all. I tell you the truth. If it ain't one thing, it's another. Hold on. Okay. All right. So this is the pre-sentencing report right here. But not the pre-sentencing report. This is something that was just filed on the 16th, 1/16. Now, as you can see, it says that the United States here versus Terica Ellis, defendant's objection. She is objecting to some of the things that's in her pre-sentence investigation report, which is a list of all the things she's ever done, and the judge is going to have that when he gets ready to sentence her. My TV was acting up, guys. So the judge gets this on everyone. He had one for Travell. He had one for Wally. This is what they do. A pre-sentencing report to let them see everything you've done. And, it may weigh in on how, what type of a sentence you get. So it says, comes now defendant. As y'all can see, I learned how to watermark my stuff. It's kind of big, but oh well. Comes now defendant Terica Ellis by and through her counsel, William Ekis, which is her attorney. And I'm not going to read all that little stuff there. It says adult criminal convictions. The defendant objects to paragraph 53 and the assessment of 1 point for a charge and criminal conviction in Shelby County, Tennessee on 2/15/06, as the alleged plea of guilty to a misdemeanor is not supported by certified court records of the plea or conviction, nor was any certified court records provided to establish the amended charge that the defendant allegedly pled to. So she's objecting to something that's in her pre-sentencing report, saying that she really didn't plead guilty, it looks like. It says, in fact, the record set forth in the pre-sentence report states charging documents as to the amended count of conviction were not provided. Court records further reflect that one count charging possession of a controlled substance was with intent was dismissed. So they're saying that charge she had with the charge with possession of a controlled substance, it was dismissed. It says defendant further objects to paragraph 54 and the assessment of 1 point for charge and conviction in Shelby County on May 28/06, as the alleged plea of guilty to a misdemeanor is not supported by certified court records of the conviction or plea of guilty. In fact, probation's request for any judicial documents has went unanswered. The use of y'all look, some of these words, why do they get me sometimes? Unsubstantiated, let's see here. Substantiated, unsubstantiated. Lord have mercy. Today has been a day. Unsubstantiated information to enhance the defendant's criminal history when such alleged occurred almost 14 years from the date that the federal offense was charged. Overemphasizes the severity of the defendant's criminal history. So they're saying that that charge is over 14 years old, and it's just overemphasizing the severity of it. It says, if reliable information indicates that the defendant's criminal history category substantially overrepresents the seriousness of the defendant's criminal history or the likelihood that the defendant will commit other crimes, a downward departure may be warranted. The Sentencing Commission set forth this section of the guidelines so that the court could weigh whether the defendant's criminal history category substantially overrepresents or overemphasizes the defendant's criminal history. The defendant argues, now this is Terica. Terica argues that such is the case here, and the court holds the discretion to make a downward departure based upon the section of the guidelines. This is all in the pre-sentencing report that was prepared for the judge before he gives her her sentence, which lists all of the things, crimes, or whatever she's been arrested for. It says, as stated in Charles Breyer letter dated September the 15th, 2021, to all the recipients of the guidelines manual, the U.S. Sentencing Commission has been operating without the quorum of 4 voting members required by statute to promulgate amendments to the sentencing guidelines, policy statements, and commentary. Thus, no updated guidelines manual has been published. Okay, this here is just basic stuff here. As well as non-prosecution policy statements made by the elected prosecuting attorneys of both the city and county of St. Louis as it pertains to misdemeanor possession of marijuana. Okay, it says criminal history. The defendant objects to paragraph 59 of the pre-sentence report and the officer's computation of the defendant's criminal history category 2. Consistent with the defendant's objection set forth in paragraph 1 of this motion, the defendant asserts that her criminal history category is 1. Pursuant to the USSG Chapter 5, it says the overemphasis of the defendant's criminal history, the lack of certified judicial court records to support the claim of a plea of guilty and conviction, and then it gives you the section. It says the court has the discretion to reduce the defendant's criminal history score. They're trying to get her criminal history score as low as possible so that the judge will give her a lower sentence. Okay, this is what all of this is about. The pre-sentencing report and all of that is to get a low score. And we did a show on this talking about how they rate how they come up with those scores for when they're ready to sentence someone. Okay, you're gonna have to dig through it, but I have a video out there. It says, but defendant further argues that despite what the 2021 guidelines manual may state, it is clear that for almost 4 years, the commission has lacked a quorum to make any guideline application of policy changes. So they're saying that they haven't had enough people and haven't had a quorum to, make any changes and review these documents. It says, so thereby leaving it up to the court, I guess they meant to use its discretion to make modifications on a case-by-case basis. So since they haven't made any changes, they're saying that the court has to use its discretion and look at each case and make a judgment. Sentencing options. The defendant objects to paragraph 90 of the pre-sentence report, specifically the criminal history calculations and the guidelines imprisonment range. As set forth by the defendant in paragraphs 1 and 2 of this motion, the defendant asserts that her criminal history category is 1. It looks like they're trying to give her maybe a 2 or above, and she wants it to remain as a 1. Wherefore, the defendant respectfully submits these objections to the court and requests this court makes a finding that defendant is entitled to a downward adjustment of 2 points because, honey, the points make a difference on her criminal history score. As such, defendant asserts that her criminal history category is a 1. It's like getting points for when you're trying to buy a house and your credit score and that things of that nature. You want your credit score to be as low as possible, so the interest rate. It says respectfully submitted, and by her law firm. So they're trying to get her to remain as a category 1. And so they're disputing some of the things that are in that pre-sentencing report. Okay. And then this here was just some documents showing you from the guidelines manual. Okay. This is from September 21, United States Sentencing Commission. This is how they sentence people for the, for the feds. And there you go. I'm not going to read all of that, but there you have it. You can look at this and, go back and slow it down and read through this here. All right. There you go. Look at my watermark. Come through, Phylly, girl. You better work that watermark. I know it's a little big, but hey, it is what it is. All right. So that was a document that was just dropped on the 16th. I wanted to go over that with you guys. Now what we're going to do is go back into the actual other document here. Let me stop sharing and go and find this. Hold on, get back to the transcript, guys. Hold on a second. Okay. All right. So let me see what y'all are saying over here. Let me move this picture before we go back to reading. I'm trying to get as much reading in as I can. So we've been on about 13 minutes. Okay. What's going on over here? What are y'all talking about? Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Deborah Lillian. Okay, thank y'all for stopping by. And if you're catching the replay, thank you so much. Oh, and let me do this. I forgot to put my banner up. Y'all know I got to put my banner up, honey. Yes, I do. This is original content. Okay, I'm the only one on this panel. We don't want anyone recording our information and then going back, using it to bully and harass anybody. Okay. All right, and we're gonna get back into this. I want to make sure I speak to everybody. Janetta, welcome in, y'all. Welcome in. Hello, Florida Bless. Once again, happy birthday to you, and happy birthday to my good friend Miss Lorraine. She had her birthday over the weekend. We said that over the weekend. Just want to say it again, Miss Bernadine. Welcome, everybody. Okay, guys, we're gonna get right back into it. So here is where we left off. We were getting ready to go into Mr. Leonard was about to give his opening statements. And as you can see, it is now watermarked. All right. Defendant's opening statement. There you go. Mr. Leonard says, as I was listening to that, I wish you all had the benefit of sort of a pop-up of what the witnesses are really going to say. What they are actually going to tell you contrary to what counsel just represented to you. What she told you was a story of the facts as they believed them to be true. It was a story of limited facts, the ones that she thinks are good for her case. What she didn't tell you about is the context of those facts. What she didn't tell you is about a whole bunch of facts that say essentially just the opposite of what she said and provide context to the facts and evidence you are going to hear. Now, this is Mr. Leonard giving his opening statement on the first day of the trial for Tim Norman, okay? We've already read a lot of testimony, but now, hey, we're reading the opening statements, and we will have the closing arguments as well. It says a complete context to all of the facts is necessary for you to decide if the government has met their burden of proving Mr. Norman guilty of anything beyond a reasonable doubt. What they didn't tell you just now is that several of their crucial witnesses have credibility problems, serious credibility problems. What does that mean? He says, they are not truthful. What does that mean? They're going to lie to you. He says, what does that mean? The court says, counsel, it is an opening statement. It is your opportunity to tell the jury what you anticipate the evidence will be. It is not the argument. So see, as you can see, Mr. Mike Leonard, and people that were there during the trial were saying that how Mike Leonard was trying to go into just the entire defense during opening statements. And that is not what opening statements are for. So Mr. Leonard says, sure. What you will hear is that the witnesses who are crucial to their case have substantial motives to testify falsely. So he's pretty much telling them that the witnesses you're going to hear, they're going to all be lying. He says, and to understand this case, you really have to understand, and you really have to understand, and what you hear during this trial is the relationship between Tim's family, and the decedent, Andre Montgomery, because what this really is, it is a story about a complex, rich, unique family here in St. Louis. You have to understand those family dynamics, which you will hear about during the course of the trial. And let's start with Tim Norman. As the judge said, his name is James Timothy Norman. He has always been Tim. He is 43 years old as he sits here before you. He was born into tragedy in this town a long time ago. His father was gunned down while he was still in the womb. It says you will hear that she is somewhat of a local legend here in town. When she was younger, they're talking about, well, we're going to, due to things you guys already know about, we're going to skip a few things, but you guys are welcome to read it, okay? It says Tim was growing up as this talent, and he had a talent for being a cook, and opened this. Well, we have all heard about it. We have all heard about Sweetie Pie's restaurant, and it started small, just a mama and pop type of restaurant here in St. Louis, while Tim was going to Hazelwood Central High School here in the area. So like I say, that's up there. You guys can read that at your leisure, okay? It says, while Tim was growing up, he had a half brother. He considered him a brother, like you would in a family, and his name was Andre Montgomery. Wait a minute. He says, and while Tim was growing up, he had a half brother. He considered him a brother, like you would in a family, and his name was Andre Montgomery Sr. He was his brother. The father of Andre Montgomery, that gets K in the case for which we are here for. And after the death of Andre Montgomery Sr., you will hear that Andre Montgomery, the decedent, he ends up growing up in Texas. So he is with his mom, Miss Griggs, in Texas, growing up, going to high school out in Texas in the Lubbock area. Things aren't going so well. So they make a decision as a family. Hey, we will have you come up to St. Louis to finish up high school. Montgomery, Tim, and the family, and get you on a better path. Of course, Andre's mom is on board for that. You will hear. I guess they meant to say you will hear Andre wanted to do that. So he comes here to St. Louis to finish up high school. And Tim, being his uncle, always felt, number one, a special bond for Andre, but secondly, a special responsibility, because after all, that is his brother's child. Really? Tim feels like he has responsibilities as if he were Andre Sr.'s father. I guess he meant Andre Jr. And so when Andre Montgomery comes here to finish high school in St. Louis, he comes in an incredible time for the family. You all heard about the TV show. What happened in a quick nutshell is Tim, you will hear, who had a talent for the arts and writing, has a 1 in a million thing happen. He writes a script for a reality show, TV show called Welcome to Sweetie Pies. You would think it would be thrown away in the garbage like other scripts. But lo and behold, Oprah Winfrey gets a hold of it and says, I want to do the reality show. Tim and the family go from being unknowns running a small restaurant here in town to celebrities across the country. and comes with that unbelievable financial success. And you will hear the proliferation of sweetie pies, not just here in St. Louis, but across the county, across the country, in California, in Texas, and in Mississippi. Yes, sweetie pies, Tim was opening them up everywhere. Y'all know he was. If you're just joining, hey, Grilling and Chilling with Mo, how you doing? Welcome in. Thank you for stopping by. Hello, everybody. Okay, Jacqueline, welcome. I'm going to get back to it because we only read an hour. All right, guys? It says, so Andre steps into all of this because remember, Andre is coming from Texas to finish high school here in St. Louis, and he becomes a member of the show. Not only is he a member of the family, but he is a member of the TV show, and he was popular on the show, guys. You all remember that? Him and Charles were two of our favorites. It says, and you know, you create a TV show, you want to show a wholesome family. You want to show all of the good things, but behind the scenes, things weren't so good. Andre, like a lot of young men in St. Louis at that time, gravitated to the gang, to the street, to the drug life. You will hear that. And what happens is a decision is made to remove him from the TV show because of his lifestyle. He says you will hear that as well. Andre does finish high school here. He lives during that period with the woman as mentioned before. Remember, that's Tim's and that's Andre's grandmother. But by the time high school is finished, because of Andre's lifestyle, legitimate concerns that he may get murked out there in the streets of St. Louis. So they call Miss Griggs in Texas, Andre's mother, and says he needs to come back to Texas. So Andre goes back to Texas to live with his mother after high school. But when he gets to Texas, there is problems. He is sort of treading water. He really doesn't have a job. He has a part-time job at a tobacco shop. He is really not even living with his mom. He is sort of couch surfing, you know, living with a friend for a couple of weeks at a time and then living with somebody else, and he is getting into trouble. So his uncle, this conspiring M that they say he is, what does he do when he hears that his nephew is struggling, not going anywhere with his life? What you hear is he decides in connection that they will bring Andre back here. Let's get him on a path where he can succeed. Let me be his mentor. This guy, they say, is the mastermind, conspiracist, murderer. So Tim calls up Andre's mom in Texas, explains, hey, I'll be Andre's mentor. He can come back here. I'm not going to treat him like certain people did, not going to give him 100% luxury life, but I'll give him an opportunity. That's exactly what Tim sets out to do. He takes specific, concrete steps to try to get Andre on a good path. First of all, he pulls all of the strings imaginable and gets him in the top rap music school in the country. Nelly's music school here in St. Louis, the Extreme Institute it was called. A perfect fit for Andre. Andre wants to be a music producer, wants to produce songs. Tim is a singer, needs someone to produce songs. Instead of Tim paying thousands of dollars to producers, Andre is going to go to this top school and become a music producer. Tim gets him in. Andre gets a job at Sweetie Pies, here a part-time job. Tim, the evil mastermind, gets him an apartment right down the hall from him in a beautiful part of St. Louis by the Central West End. Okay, St. Louis, if y'all in here, is that a beautiful part of St. Louis? It says Tim gives him spending money. Tim gives him cars, use of cars, everything you could do to put a young man in a position to succeed. That's what you hear that he did. But it doesn't really work because Andre goes to music school, but then he doesn't. Andre works at Sweetie Pies, but then he doesn't. Andre gravitates back to the street life. Andre gets kicked out of the apartment that Tim gave him because he is getting in trouble there and his friends are breaking into cars. They break into the ATM. Then it says weed is coming from the apartment building. And Ms. Carroll says, Your Honor, objection. The objection is sustained because what Mr. Leonard was doing, he was talking about things that really were not relevant to an opening statement. Okay, he was trying to try the actual victim here. Andre is a victim. So they sustained that objection. Mr. Leonard says, so what happens is around the time Andre is, it says, what happens is around the time is Andre is back living the street life. Now, there is this whole idea that counsel has just said to you about evidence you are going to hear about insurance. Let's talk about that, okay? Because this whole thing of insurance you will hear occurs at the time Andre comes back from Texas when he has moved back here to St. Louis for Tim to be the mentor. How does that come about? You will hear from one of the alleged star witnesses from the government, Mr. Yogman. Well, we didn't hear from him, did we? We sort of heard from him, but he didn't testify in person. It says you are probably going to think of him as Wally because we all call him Wally because his name is hard to pronounce. And on the street, his name is Wally. You will hear that Wally was, and Wally is going to testify. He is going to say that he was a music producer. Ms. Carroll says, objection, Your Honor. Okay, they says approach the sidebar. Now, these proceedings, what we're about to read, were held at the sidebar, and everyone in the court that day could not hear. But because we have the actual transcript, we are going to get to read and find out just what was said at that sidebar. All right, guys, are y'all ready? Okay, Nina in here. The TV's not working, so I can't say, hey, Keisha has made it. All right, come on in, guys. We're going to get right back to it. He says, what's the objection, counsel? So she says, Your Honor, first of all, it is argumentative. Second, the government has made no representations beyond that Travell Hill would testify. And defense counsel seems to be promising the jury they will hear from Mr. Yogman. The government has not notified the defense of which witnesses they will and will not be calling. It is improper. So the judge says there is nothing that would actually prevent the defense from calling Mr. Yogman. I think it is permissible for him to say that Mr. Yogman would say. I mean, but much of what you have argued, well, it is totally irrelevant to this case. Mr. Leonard said, I'm getting there, Judge. It is a conspiracy about an insurance policy. So he tells him, you have to get to what you think the evidence will be that relates to this case. He says, I'm here. I'm talking about the insurance agent. I'm there. I'm talking about the insurance agent. So he says the objection will be the objection is overruled at this point. If you want to renew the objection, you can. So now they're going back into open court where everyone can hear them. So he says, counsel, you may proceed. So then Mr. Leonard says, and what I expect Wally to tell you is the following, that in conjunction with Andre's return from Texas to St. Louis, Wally, who is himself a music producer, understands that the type of music Andre is into, which is called drill, a reality rap, which focuses on reality of the street, guns, drugs, threats, things of that nature, could make him a target. Wally, the insurance broker, would say that he thought it was a legitimate, a good idea to get an insurance policy on Andre. That's what Wally will actually say. Well, Wally didn't say anything because we know he didn't testify. It says, and what you will hear is that Wally has a meeting. What do you think is there? You will hear that at that meeting, Andre Montgomery is there sitting at a table with Wally so that Wally can take down all of the information about Andre so he can put it in the insurance application and then submit that insurance application for an insurance policy. That's not him. That's Wally. That's what Wally does to have a meeting. He asks Andre all of the questions. Health, education, fitness, height, weight, but we know they lied about all of that. It says, and what does Wally do? He brings with him 3 applications. He only fills out one, but he doesn't tell these guys that. But he has Andre sign them all. Fills out one. Has Andre sign them all. And it is not Tim Norman that's submitting the applications for insurance to insurance companies. It is Wally, the insurance agent, like everyone else does in America. And what you will hear is that Wally cuts a few corners. So Wally takes the one app where he really filled it out. He takes the other apps where he has the signatures and he does things such as trace over signatures of Andre and Tim Norman. He does things like get an electronic e-file application and pretend it is Andre and Tim clicking a checkbox to sign for the application. That's what the insurance agent does. That is the insurance fraud. It is hard to defraud somebody, meaning Andre, and plot against him when he is the guy who knows that a policy is being taken out on him, that he knows his uncle is paying the premiums, and he knows that his uncle would get the death benefit if he dies. Kind of hard to defraud Andre Montgomery when he knows all of these things and agrees with them. And again, guys, this is Tim's attorney giving his opening statement because it was proven, I believe, that Andre was never at that meeting. It says, you will hear in the testimony and evidence that it wasn't just Tim Norman that took out a life insurance policy. It says because they saw dangers associated with Andre's life. So they took out an insurance policy on him. So did Andre's mother. She took out a policy on Andre. It says, are they all criminal masterminds that are out to K Andre? The evidence won't support that. So as things are sort of falling apart here in St. Louis for Andre after he moved back, while Tim was trying to mentor him, a significant event occurs which you will hear a lot about during this trial. Andre, it says a house was broken into. We all know about that. Someone comes in who happens to know the code, happens to know the house and where things are hidden. They say they get away with valuable property. They get away with irreplaceable items, okay? They get away with a tower where you store data and that has Tim's scripts and Tim's music. What you will hear right after that, right after the place gets robbed and everything is taken, Andre Montgomery is gone. He is gone for about 7 months. It says what you will hear during the trial is two things. Why not? It says here, people are looking for Andre, and why not? To K him or not to harm him, to get him to fess up, to return the property and return to the family after he does that, like they would. You will hear that there is no secret that Tim Norman, my client, he is making it known to the whole world that he too is looking for Andre on behalf. It says, why? To K him? No. To get back the loot that he stole, to have Andre fess up and to have Andre return to the family. Because despite his actions, kind of like the prodigal son, that looks like protocol, the prodigal son, their hearts were still there if Andre would do those things. Their heart was still there for him to come back into their lives. So they did things like they hired a private detective. They looked at pawn shops. They talked to people in other cities to figure out where he was, what he was doing. But what you will hear is they obviously believed that he couldn't be traveling the country with all of this loot, with all of this property, that it had to be stashed right there in St. Louis. That would make sense, right? And so it takes us to March of 2016 when Andre Montgomery is K. Before we get there, you just heard from the government that this mastermind over here, indicating to Tim, is so desperate for money in March of 2016 that he wants his nephew murked so he can collect the insurance policy because he needs that money. Here's what the evidence would show during the trial. That's not true. That Tim at the time was living in Los Angeles. Why? Because the Sweetie Pie show and the restaurants had gotten so big, they were starting to open up in LA. So they took a whole bunch of the cast out to LA. They are shooting the show out there in LA. Tim is living in LA. He ain't living like a pauper. Mike Leonard say that means he's not living, he's not living like a peasant. He is living in a luxury accommodation. He has probably got as many cars as I have fingers and thumbs. He has got from everybody's account tons of money all the time. It says he has got from everybody's account tons of money all the time. Why? Because you have Sweetie Pie stores here, multiple locations. You have Sweetie Pie stores in LA, and eventually they are going to open them in Texas and other states. He ain't hurting for money. It doesn't make any sense when you hear the evidence. There is no need for Tim to go get money. Let's talk about the fateful day where sadly Andre is murked. They just talked about these key witnesses, right? Let's talk about what really happened, not their version of what happened, what the facts will show during the trial. Counsel, it is argumentative. That's what the judge is saying. Mr. Leonard says, sorry, Judge. What you will hear, let's start with Miss Terica. Let's start with Miss Ellis. Terica Ellis. Now, you know we already read her testimony, so we know what she said. It says she is an exotic dancer. She is a stripper. She does basically prostitute herself out. Ooh, he was raw and to the point, wasn't he? There is no question about that. She is already here in St. Louis working. So she gets in town, say the Thursday or Friday, several days before Andre is murked. She is not here as a part of any conspiracy. You will hear she is here to dance. She is here to make money. She is not here because Tim Norman said, hey, come into town and do a M for hire. She is working. You will next hear that the way they meet up, Tim and Miss Ellis, is that Tim comes to St. Louis. Why? You will hear it is not because of some murder conspiracy. Why does Tim come to St. Louis that weekend from LA? Because he has done that consistently since he moved. Why? Because he comes here and he goes to the Sweetie Pie stores and he takes the money out of the safes. That's what he does when he comes to St. Louis, and that's why he was here that day. And what the testimony will actually show is that, like so many other times when Tim gets into town, you might not like his lifestyle, but he contacts women that he has had prior sexual relationships with, and he reaches out to Miss Ellis. He doesn't know if she is working or not, and she responds. And like so many other times, she comes to his hotel room and she has sex with him. Whether or not that's good or not is not the question, but that's what happened. Neither of them were here for any criminal mastermind of a M for hire. That's what the evidence will show. And what happens is you will hear that Miss Ellis in the past, she likes to ask Tim for money. Can I have this money? Can I have that money? Can I have this money? He gives it to her. But one thing is clear. Every time they have sex, he gives her money. And this is no exception. It is exactly what happens like so many other times. And what you will hear is kind of bizarre. It's kind of a bizarre coincidence. They have sex. They're talking. They shower. They're talking about their lives. She is saying, hey, I'm going to open this boutique store down in Memphis, where she really lives. And Tim is talking to her about what is going on in his life. He's living out in LA, all that kind of stuff. And he tells her, as a matter of fact, there's this thing with my nephew. We have been looking for him. He has no idea that Miss Ellis actually knows him, that those two had been communicating unbeknownst to Tim Norman. How? Because Andre Montgomery had gone to a strip club. He had met Terica Ellis and told her he was a rapper from New Orleans. So in a bizarre coincidence, Tim learns from Terica that Terica knows Andre, and it doesn't sound like a sophisticated planned out M for hire plot, because it is not. That's how it comes about. Tim learned for the first time that Terica even knows Andre. And as the government said, you're going to hear from Terica. What is she going to tell you? She is going to say that Tim never mentioned any idea or plan to harm Andre or K Andre. It didn't happen. Just like Tim had told her, we are looking for Andre to get our stuff back. That's what he told her. Just like that. Everybody's been looking for 7 or 8 months. And so they agree. Since she knows him, she can put Tim in a location where they can find Andre and they can get the stuff back. Pretty simple. not nefarious, not a murder plot. And Miss Ellis is going to tell you that if she thought for a second that Tim, who she has known for years, found him to be a gentleman, if she thought that he had any intent to harm or K. Andre, she would have not had a part of it. But she knew that's not what Tim's intent was, okay? She knew Tim was looking for him. Now, let's go to Travell Hill, the other witness the government relies upon. Just to remind you, Travell Hill is the guy that shoots Andre. Who made that decision? Travell Hill, and Travell Hill. He's trying to drill in their minds that Travell Hill did that. He says, and Travell Hill alone. Travell Hill had no agreement with anybody to harm Andre Montgomery. Travell Hill had no agreement with anybody to K. Andre Montgomery. What you will hear is this story. Travell Hill is going to get up there and say, well, I met with that guy named White Chris. Who is White Chris? Right? White Chris is the guy who sold drugs, who he sold drugs with. That's who White Chris is. He is not some mystery man. He is a guy who sold drugs with, and he is going to tell you, it wasn't Tim Norman that told me to harm or K. Andre Montgomery. It was the guy White Chris. But White Chris didn't even say that. He just said something that led me to believe that maybe he wanted me to K him. Child, boy, that's what he is going to tell you. That's not an agreement with Tim Norman. That's an agreement with anybody. That's not an agreement with anybody to do anything. And so the judge says, that's argumentative. Okay, guys, let me see what you guys are saying over here. All right, Keisha's in the building. The rain been awful. Oh, okay. Has it been raining? Queen of Attraction, welcome in. Okay, y'all, we're going to get right on back to the reading. Queen Gertrude, how you doing? Hold on 1 second, guys. 1 second. Let me go get my juice. Hold on a second, y'all. All right, guys. I had to go get me some grape juice. Okay. He says that's argumentative again. Opening statement is your opportunity to tell them what you anticipate the evidence to be. It is improper. I have told you a couple of times, make an opening statement. So the judge was getting on to Mike Little. Remember, they was telling us, people that were there reporting, Dale and all of them, they were saying that, hey, Mike Leonard was going in during the opening statement, and that's not what you're supposed to do. So he says, thanks, Judge. Sure. That's what you will hear from Travell Hill. They also mentioned a couple of other people. They said that Big Ed is key to this somewhat. What you will hear is that Ed is an ordinary guy. He's a guy that works at Sweetie Pies. He's the guy that did security. He might work at one store or another, making sure that the lines were good, people weren't causing any trouble. And Ed would tell you that, yeah, he saw Andre at Sweetie Pies, at a Sweetie Pies location a week or 10 days or 2 weeks before Tim Norman came to town. And the evidence will show that when Tim Norman gets a text picture of Andre being here in St. Louis, Tim Norman doesn't rush back here to try to harm or K. Andre Montgomery. Tim doesn't reach out to anybody and say, hey, grab him, hold on to him, don't let him go. You won't hear any of that. It is a simple text by a simple guy named Ed to Tim and various other people. It is like, hey, look, Andre is back. You know what, Mike Leonard? That is so bogus. He says, he has been gone for 7 months. Everyone thought he stopped. He's back here in town. That's what the evidence is. He says the last person the government emphasized was a guy named Daryl Howard. We've already read his testimony. It says again, what you will hear him testify to is now what they are saying. Daryl Howard won't tell you that. Hey, I knew there was he says, I knew there was any sort of plot. I guess it's going to say, I knew there wasn't any sort of plot by Tim or anyone else to harm Andre Montgomery. That never happened. And the great thing about this is you don't need to take my word for any of this. You will get to see these people testify in this courtroom on their witness stand. And then you can evaluate whether the government has met its burden of proving Tim guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of anything. And whether what I'm telling you they are going to say is what they say. Because when you hear what they are going to say during this trial over the next week or two, we think you are going to conclude that the government has failed to prove Tim Norman guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of anything that he is charged with. I appreciate your patience. It says, the court says, counsel, you may proceed with your first witness. Okay, how much time we have here? Looks like we may be able to finish this up because we got about 15 minutes and her testimony is not long. Ms. Danny says, thank you, Your Honor. The government calls Miss Michelle GRIGGS. Says, so the judge tells her, if you will step up here, the clerk will administer the oath. If you will speak into the microphone, it will help amplify your voice. Counsel, you may proceed. And Miss Dennis is the one questioning Miss GRIGGS. She says, thank you, Your Honor. And here is Miss Michelle GRIGGS, the mother of Andre Montgomery, guys. And we are going to get rid of, in case you don't remember what she looks like. Hold on a second. I think I have a picture up here somewhere. There is Andre and his mom right there, okay? There is Miss Michelle. All right, let's get into her testimony. It says she was sworn in and testified as follows. Direct examination. This is being direct examination means she's being questioned by the prosecution. By Miss Dennis. Says, please introduce yourself to the jury. My name is Michelle GRIGGS. How old are you, Miss GRIGGS? I am 55. How many children do you have, Miss GRIGGS? I have 6 children. Is one of those children Andre Montgomery? Yes. And can I please show the witness only Exhibit 39? Can you see the photograph up there? Miss GRIGGS? Yes. Do you recognize that photograph? She says yes. Is that a picture of your son, Andre Montgomery? Yes. Ms. Danny says, I move to admit Exhibit 39 into evidence. So the judge asks Mr. Leonard, any objection, counsel? He says none. So they say Exhibit 39 will be admitted. So she says, can we please publish that to the jury so the jury can see Andre? It says you may. Then she says, Miss GRIGGS, when was Andre born? October the 14th, 1993. Where was he born? San Diego, California. Who is Andre's father? Andre Montgomery Sr. And is Andre Montgomery Sr. still living? No. When did he pass away? When Andre was 8 months old. Do you know the defendant, James Timothy Norman? Yes. What do you know? It says, what do you know him as? What do you call him? Tim. Do you see him in the courtroom today? Yes. Can you please identify him by where he is seated in an article of clothing? He is wearing a blue suit and a black sweater. Ms. Dennis, Your Honor, I'd ask the record to reflect that Ms. GRIGGS has identified the defendant. So the judge says the record will so reflect. Says, can you explain for us how your son, Andre Montgomery, is related to Tim Norman? Kind of your family tree. Andre's father is the oldest son, and Tim is Andre Montgomery's senior brother. So he would be Andre Montgomery Jr.'s uncle. Is that correct? Yes. Now, did Andre graduate high school, your son, Andre? And when I say Andre, from now on, we are referring to your son, Andre. She says, yes. Did he graduate high school in 2013? Yes. Where do you live? Lubbock, Texas. Did Andre graduate from high school in Texas or here in St. Louis? St. Louis. Can you describe for us how it is that he moved from Lubbock to St. Louis? He came down Thanksgiving and Andre wanted to stay here. When he was in St. Louis, did he work at the restaurant? She said, yes. What jobs did he do there? He was a busboy. After he graduated high school, did he remain in St. Louis or did he come back to Lubbock, Texas? He came back to Lubbock. And then sometime in 2014, did he return to St. Louis? She says, yes. Can you explain for us how it is in 2014 that Andre moved back to St. Louis? Why did he do that? Tim had called me and asked me if he could bring Andre back so he could teach him how to be a man. So it was Tim's idea to bring him back. Yes. Did the defendant ask you to provide any documents or anything like that on behalf of Andre? She says, yes. What were those documents? His birth certificate, his social security card, and his high school diploma. And he was plotting in for that insurance policy. And where was Andre supposed to live when he got back to St. Louis? With Tim. And was it your understanding that Tim was supposed to be responsible for looking after Andre? Yes. What kind of jobs did Andre work when he was in St. Louis? None, just went to school. How long did he remain in school? Not long, 6 months maybe. Did Andre ever work as a music producer when he was in St. Louis? No. Did he ever have knowledge of Andre? Did you ever have knowledge of Andre working as a music producer? No. About how tall was your son, Andre Montgomery? 5'10". Do you know about how much he weighed? 210. To your knowledge, did Andre have any assets? No. Did he have $200,000 worth of assets? No. Did Tim Norman ask you if he could take out a life insurance policy on your son? No. Let me ask you this. Did you have a policy on your son? Yes. What amount was that policy for? $50,000. Do you have policies on all of your children? Yes. On March 14th of 2016, did you learn that Andre had been M? Yes. How did you find out? Oh my goodness. It says they called her and it says that was the person that called you says yes. Were you, and you guys can see that, you can read it yourself. Were you in Lubbock at the time? Yes. Did Tim call you? No. When was the first time after Andre's demise that you spoke to the defendant? At Andre's funeral. What did he say to you? I'm sorry for your loss. At any time after his demise, did the defendant tell you that he had a $450,000 life insurance policy on your son? No. When was the first time you heard that? When I came here. You heard that from law enforcement? Yes. Ms. Griggs, I'm going to show you just for witnesses on, just for the witness only, what I have marked as Government's Exhibit 62. What is that photograph, ma'am? And she's crying right now. And she says that's her son. What time are we at? We got about 5 minutes left. So then Ms. Dana says, Your Honor, I move for the admission of Government's Exhibit 62 into evidence. Says any objection? No objection. So they admitted that into evidence. It says, take your time, ma'am. There is some Kleenex there. So Ms. Griggs was crying because, I don't know what type of a photograph. I hope they didn't show the deceased photograph. Oh my goodness. So then she says, Ms. Dana says, Ms. Griggs, at any time when Andre was living in St. Louis with Tim, did the defendant ever express to you that he was concerned about Andre's lifestyle? She said, no. Did he ever express to you that he was in danger? No. And it says, one moment, I have nothing further, Your Honor. So that was it. So here comes Mr. Leonard. And like I say, they didn't question her long. He says to her, "Do you want a minute, ma'am?" She says, "Okay." He said, I just have a couple of questions for you, ma'am. When Tim," he said, "strike that. Let's just kind of step back for a second." So he changed up what he was going to say. When Andre came back to Texas after finishing high school in St. Louis, he was kind of not being productive out there in Texas. Is that correct? She said, "Yes." Right, ma'am. She said, "Yes." He says, "Okay, for example, I think he had a part-time job at the tobacco shop. Is that correct?" She said, "Yes." But in terms of his living arrangements, he was kind of couch surfing from one friend's place to the next. She says, "Yes." And you told her that Andre really wasn't doing anything productive out there in Texas. Is that correct? Says, "Yes." And then you thought that must have been what Tim said. Is that correct? Miss Danny says, "Objection, calls for speculation." Says, "You can answer if you know it, ma'am." She says, "I don't know." Mr. Leonard said, "Ma'am, you had some meetings with these people here on the left," indicating the prosecutors and the agents. So she had been meeting with them. She says, "Yes." "And you sat down with them for about an hour and they asked you a whole bunch of questions. Is that correct?" She said, "When?" He said, "You met with them in a conference room about a year ago in 2021. She says, "Yes." He says, "Okay. One of the things you told them when you met with them is that you had conveyed your concerns to Tim Norman. Didn't didn't you tell these folks that?" She says, "No, you didn't tell them that." "Okay. And so when Tim calls and offers to mentor your son, you thought it was a good idea, didn't you?" She says, "Yes." "You thought it would be a way to hopefully get his life back on a productive path." "Yes." And then, of course, Andre does move back here to St. Louis area. Is that correct? To the St. Louis area. Is that correct? She says, "Yes." And one of the things that happens is that Tim gives him an apartment kind of just down the hall from where he lived, right? I didn't know exactly where he lived at. "Okay, but you did know that Tim got him an apartment." She says, "Yes." "And you knew that it was close to Tim. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Okay. You knew that Andre was able to get at least a part-time job at the Sweetie Pies where he came back when he came back here. Is that right?" "I'm not sure." "You didn't know if he was working or not?" She said, "No." "But you knew when he came back here, he was living back here again, that he went to the music school. Is that right?" She says, "Yes." He says, Nellie's music school, right?" "Yes." "Kind of a top place. Is that right?" "I just know it was Nellie's school." He says, "And you thought it was a great thing that he was doing that. Is that right?" She says, "Yes." "And then unfortunately things didn't work out at the school for Andre, right?" She says, "Right." "And so he stopped going to school, right?" She says, "Yes." And then he stopped working at Sweetie Pies. Is that correct?" She says, "I'm not sure." "And you were aware he had gotten into some trouble here?" She says, "No." He says, "And Andre, you talk to him from time to time, right, ma'am?" She says, "Yes." "And he wouldn't tell you everything he was doing, would he?" "No." "What kid does?" "And sometimes he wouldn't tell you what he was doing. Is that right?" She says, "Yes." "And sometimes you wouldn't communicate for periods of time, right, ma'am?" "Yes." "And counsel asked you about this concept of an insurance policy. Did Andre tell you that he had sat down with a guy named Wally to give Wally information to create an insurance policy?" "No." Ms. Danny says, "Objection. It is not the evidence." Court says, "She has answered the question no, so pose another question." So he says, "Sure. So you didn't know, is it fair to say that this guy Wally that I just mentioned, you had never heard of him?" She says, "No." "You didn't know he was an insurance agent here in St. Louis?" "No." "And you didn't know that he had met with your son?" Ms. Danny says, "Objection. Facts, not in the evidence. The objection is sustained to the form of the question." So Mr. Leonard rephrases his question. "And then, ma'am, is it correct that after Andre had returned here, after he had stopped working at Sweetie Pies and after he stopped going to the music school, that he was no longer here in St. Louis?" She said, "When?" He said, "I'm sorry. When?" she said, when? He said, I'm sorry. She said, when? Yeah, when Andre comes back here after Tim called you and brought him back. She said, as we said, he was here for a while, right? She says, yes. Okay, what's the time looking like? Because if it's an hour, because my neck. Yes, it's an hour. Okay, guys, we'll finish this up tomorrow because we're almost done. We're going to stop right here. He's asking her about, Drake coming back and living with Tim and this, that, and the other. So we'll start right here on page 57. Okay, we do 1 hour and you guys can catch the replay. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Like I said, you guys wanted me to continue to do this live, so I hope you continue to support it. All right. I know I might stumble on a word or two every now and then, but hey, it is what it is. I'm not perfect. Okay, I'm gonna get out of here, guys. Thank you so very, very much. And rest in peace, Drake. And I'll see y'all later.
It's been a long, long time, honey, but I know, yeah. Store. Everybody ain't your friend, everybody ain't your partner. I say I got you.
Jackie, how you doing? Glad you was able to stop by. I talked to her earlier. Boss Man, M. Hardman, everybody that came by, please check out the replay. I appreciate you guys so much. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.